Welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel, and welcome back to Jamie. Jamie, you and I haven't spoken about yesterday's fight.
We have
Um,
not.
well, firstly, good to see you, and good to see you wearing Andy's Cavern T-shirt as well.
I like the
Let,
fact you brought it up. Sleeping with the
let,
enemy here, Bob.
yeah,
So,
let's give Andy's Cavern a shout out. Andy's a friend of
yes,
ours, and we should try and get as many people to subscribe to his channel as possible. Um, Did you enjoy the fights yesterday?
I did. I did. I obviously I can only watch one thing at once because I'm not like Octopus Man where I've got 8 different limbs and all that. But I caught up with Callum Simpson today, and I also watched Jaya Pattaya, which I'm sure we'll discuss in a bit
Yeah,
of
for
detail
sure.
later. But yeah,
Absolutely.
card
Um,
last night was good. I enjoyed it.
yeah, I did a couple of videos about it before, and I did a video about the result. So everybody knows my opinion already. But you're the guest. I'd like you to have a chance to tell everybody what you thought of the fight and where. So, what did you think of the fight, and what did you think of Fabio Wardley? Um,
Uh, I believe I enjoyed the fight. Like, it wasn't much of a fight for 10 rounds, was it really? It's like, I don't know what you think, Bob, but Hooney really impressed me. I think I likened his performance to something. He's very, very similar to sort of Baguette Caballero,
mhm.
rolling underneath sometimes and trying to slip the jab and then just coming back with his own sort of jabbing, looking quite basic in everything that he does. But his pressing was very good. He was pressing the fight. He was forcing the action, and yeah, he was just he wasn't for the vast majorities of the fight. He wasn't looking to let Fabio Wardley off the hook. He was really like um, pressing him and trying to make it as uncomfortable as possible. But as we know about heavyweight boxing, it only takes a split second. He was throwing a shot, and Fabio Wardley just turned his lights out with his own right hand.
Were you surprised? I think we both. I can't remember what your prediction was. My prediction was sixth round KO by Wardley, but I knew that Hooney would come to box, but I wasn't expecting him to be on the front foot so much. What was your
No.
take on that?
Well, my take on that, it forced me like last night because I know we're both fans of Fabio Wardley, but last night forced me to really like assess his previous performances and really have a look at sort of what level I think he's going to be at. Because to be honest, I don't think they're not gonna reward him with a rematch, Justice Hooney, because I
No,
think they'll realise that whilst Fabio Wardley was, it was Fabio Wardley's fists that did the job. I think they got away with one there because that the stoppage looked a little bit like it could have gone on. Um, but I mean, that's just an opinion without watching it too many times.
well,
Uh,
th- uh,
Go on, sorry.
no. But you've raised a couple of really good points. Number one, you and I are both fans of Fabio Wardley, but I think as fans, we need to be honest.
Yep.
And if you like, we owe it to people watching this channel to sort of, you know, be upfront about the fact we are fans, but we should also be critical where appropriate of somebody that we are a fan of. Um, and the other thing you touched on there, not going to give Hooney a rematch and see where, Fabio is. I think those are
No.
really good points. I think I think would it be fair to say, James, that Fabio was exposed yesterday, or is that too strong of a word?
No, I think that's too strong of a word because we got to remember the position that Fabio's come from in the first place. Every single fight that Fabio wins in the professional boxing sphere at any level really is, he's overachieving. The man never had an amateur contest. So, I don't feel like he's been exposed because he wasn't great shakes to begin with. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah, good point.
what? Yeah, what I do think last night's fight, and I know I was rambling a bit, so I do apologise, Bob, and thanks for interjecting. Last night exposed that Ben Davison, even though he wasn't the main trainer, obviously he's the man doing all the talking, which I find a bit distasteful, really. It might be just because the other Fabio's main trainer, I can't even tell you his name. I do apologise. Maybe he doesn't like the spotlight, but if that was a game plan born from Ben Davidson, then I think we realise that Ben Davison fighters, or I realise that he doesn't like boxing on the front foot. He's just a very like he relies too much on the he likes it. Obviously, the one shot get out clause. Because he's the
Mhm.
same with Lee Wood. How many times have we seen Lee Wood on the back foot and he's struggling? He's you know um, Michael Conlon. No great puncher, but he was tying Lee Wood up in knots, and then suddenly, boom, just like last night,
Yeah.
Josh Warrington winning the fight, pressing. When uh, Ben Davison fighters are pressed, he really doesn't. I mean, it's down to the fighter, but I don't really think that Ben Davison knows how to sort of incite a strategy with front foot fighters. You've got to be on the back foot, and you've got to be boxing or looking like you're boxing smart, like Tyson Fury was in the first fight against Deontay Wilder. He doesn't really understand that. I believe last night they could have made it a lot easier on Fabio Wardley
Hmm.
if he'd have gone forward and met fire with fire. A lot of times, I think he was being like Justice Hooney was great, and he was getting off with a jab and he was doing everything that he was supposed to do, or I was expecting him to do in the early rounds because that was part of my prediction. But I think Wardley looks like the bigger, stronger guy out there, like in stature. So use your frame and fight fire with fire. At times, he just seemed too content to just lay back on the ropes and try and counter. And
Hmm.
you're trying to counter a guy that is a better technical boxer than you. I just think it basically it was suicide. Luckily for Fabio, he had that one punch in his locker because I don't think that they're talking about Agit Caballero, who is a well Justice Hooney times two, really, and
Oh, I
he
think
won't get an opportunity.
for what it's worth, I think that if Caballal had been in with Wardley yesterday, I think Wardley would have been fortunate to see round four.
Yeah, I would say so. Maybe a little bit longer. I would have give it just because I think that Caballero would have really made the most of those ropes and just hammered the body. And obviously, it might take a little bit longer to chop a tree down, but I do think he would have been a bit more clinical um, had he been able to sort of switch it up and hit Fabio with those clean right hands that Hooney was landing yesterday.
Yeah,
So
and
maybe 6 or 7.
I suspect that Caballal hits harder than Hooney as well.
Yeah,
I
I would
mean,
say so.
of course, Hooney hits plenty hard. He was close to 250 pounds fight night, but
Yeah.
he's not the hardest hitter in the division. Do you think you were talking about Ben Davidson there? Do you think Ben Davidson is doing to Fabio what Malik Scott was trying to do to Deontay Wilder?
Yeah, trying to turn him into a little bit more fancy Dan. And again, it's not all Ben Davison. I do want to stress that point because obviously he's not the main trainer, but he is sticking himself front and centre media wise. So it's
Yeah.
easy for me to sort of pick holes. But then when I have a look at the similarities in style between what Fabio was doing last night, what Lee Wood has done the last 3 or 4 fights of his career, and then what Tyson Fury did in the Wilder first fight, you've got to think, well, the battle plans are being drawn up by Ben Davison. I think he likes his fighters to work off a jab, a good stiff jab. And, we saw that with Lee Wood against Kanju. Fabio Wardley's got a great jab when he employs it, but I just don't think that was the way to go. I mean, we've seen in past fights, we've seen Justice Hooney, wobbled by punchers.
Yeah, well,
Well, not
Lorena
people that
very
aren't
much
necessarily.
wobbled him.
Well, yeah, exactly, and that was a a career cruiserweight, really, Lorena. So why go backwards? Why employ the jab off your back foot? Go forward, fight fire with fire, and fireworks will happen. And that's what happened last night. So I do think I don't know who's drawing up the plans, but I just think you look at the aesthetics of it, and it's very, very similar to all the other fighters he's training, I think. And Fabio Wardley's a man who's got plums the size of, I don't know, King Kong. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
use that heart, use that savagery, because there's only a few fights he's got left where he can employ that, because we know you get punched in the head for a living constantly and you're not defensively adept. You've only got a couple of fights in the locker.
Well, this is
So
what
go
I
and
was
make the
going to
most of
say.
it.
I mean, his style, um, which is something that we like because obviously we're fans of him, right?
Yeah.
But that style generally will lead to a fairly short career timeline, right? I
Yep.
mean, unless you want to end up um, really, really risking your health.
Yeah.
Fabio Wardley strikes me as a fellow who's got an immense amount of opportunities ahead of him in broadcasting, I mean, even in movies, right? I mean, he's a very telegenic kind of fellow.
Yeah.
Um, it would be a great pity to see that, uh, that those verbal skills diminished because of taking too many blows to the head.
Well, I think just to counter your point there, Bob, and I agree exactly with what you're saying, but I think this is one of the few instances where if you have a fighter go forward, he's going to take less
Yeah,
pummeling to the head, just because if he throws his hands, obviously we've seen what he can do. You know what I mean? He's a massive puncher when he wants to be.
yeah.
If you employ the back foot the way that Davison and Attal were doing last night, it's just opening him up to be. He was taking shots that he didn't need to take last night.
Yeah, it doesn't play to his skill set, right? Like he is not defensively blessed, and he doesn't have the basic skill sets that you would have developed as a high level amateur.
Yeah, or even
But
an amateur. Full stop.
he's offensively blessed in a big way. So
Yep.
if he's coming forward and he's using those offensive weapons, he might not get hit so much. Is that's what you're
No,
saying, right?
that's basically what I'm saying. Yeah, I think it would be better. You've got to look at what you're working with. I believe, and I know, Julian's not here, but Julian McGowan's become a really good friend of ours, hasn't he? And
Yeah.
he'll talk about it and stuff, and he's talked about his own training journey where he doesn't necessarily fight to one style, like say Ben Davison looks to be doing. He works with the clay that he's got, and look at the skill set. Do you know what I mean? Like the great football teams of the past. The great Liverpool teams of like the '80s and that are firing on all cylinders. You're
Sorry, I
not going to
thought
be
you were going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers for a second there.
know nothing about American football. But what I mean is, like, do you know what I mean? If you've got all that firepower, you don't start playing like Jose Mourinho and sitting back when you've scored one goal, do you?
No, I know
I don't
exactly
really
what you mean.
understand it.
Yeah, yeah,
Understand it. Look at
um,
what he's been blessed with and work with that.
yeah. I think that Fabio's a smart guy, right? Like I think we can accept that. He wouldn't have gotten where he's gotten if he wasn't a smart guy, and I think he's also really quite self-aware. I think he's going to
Yeah.
take a lot of learnings from last night's performance. Um, the 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 other thing that strikes me is that he's going to have to be careful in how he's matched going forward.
Yeah, I would say so. But
Like,
we're at a level now, aren't we, Bob? That's the thing.
yeah, I mean, maybe I was being a bit harsh when I said exposed, and I recognize that was probably a loaded term. I think for me, I think I found where Fabio's ceiling is.
Yeah,
Now he
yeah,
can improve a bit. He can work on defensive technique, and like you said, he can work on better game plans that play to his strengths. But I think there is a limit to how good he can be,
yeah. I would say so.
and he's 30 years old, right? So he's got some time on his side, but he's not like he's 22, right?
No.
Do you think there would be any point in Fabio hooking up with a guy like Andy Lee?
Not necessarily. Just because Andy Lee is very Andy Lee. I mean, he's done a lot of work with Josie Parker, whereby Josie Parker's a bit of a hit and run merchant now, and it was good for Wilder, but like employ the feet, and again, that's not what Fabio is adept at. I believe. You know what I mean? He can move, but not really a fancy Dan. He's more of a go out there Top Gun merchant. So
Right. Yeah. No, what I was thinking about, it's just because Andy Lee doesn't sort of seem like a very obvious choice, but Andy Lee has allowed Joseph Parker to let his hands go and is sort of infused in Parker, that sort of, more of an aggressive style.
wouldn't Sugar Hill be a better fit because he
Oh,
plant the
yes.
feet, plant the feet.
Yeah.
That's just my
Yeah.
thoughts.
Actually, yeah, that might be the guy. Because like you, I'm not sort of absolutely enthralled with Ben Davidson. I mean, I'm not, you know.
No, he's done well. He's obviously like there's people getting in fighters' ears and saying go to Ben Davison. Do you know what I mean? He's obviously doing something right. I can't sit here and just criticize him for criticizing sake. All I'm doing is I've got quite the eye for boxing, as you have, Bob. You've seen plenty of it. I've been, and I've done a fair bit. Like I've been involved in the sport and stuff like that. So I've seen a myriad of trainers and things like that. And I just think, yeah, he's good, but he's good for a certain type of fighter. I think Fabio Wardley needs, but Fabio Wardley would do well to go to America and just, maybe get a trainer that, because they're very big on attacking Noose in America, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think that would suit him better than trying to instill defense in him and defensive boxing when it's really not his forte.
Do you think? I was thinking about some names, like, because now we've established roughly where his ceiling is, and we know what Frank Warren's going to try and find the smoothest path, right? We get that,
Yeah.
but I think we could accept that an Usyk, a Dubois, a Caballel, a Parker, that's too much. That would be a bridge too far. But
Yeah.
how would Fabio fare against Philip Hrgovic?
That'd be a very interesting fight because Philip Ergovich has shown he can be wobbled. That's a very good. Are you a matchmaker in secret, Bob?
I was thinking,
think,
that would be a real 50-50 fight.
Be fireworks, wouldn't there? I think they'd stand in the center of the ring, and I think, Fabio. Again, I think it'd be made difficult if he was with Davison because, again, I think they'd just be like, "Oh, use your jab," without actually trying to get inside. Just use it off your back foot. But if he was just to stand there and plant his feet, I think that would be quite a fight. And I do think he could probably beat Hrgovic because Hrgovic can be wobbled.
He can be wobbled, but he does have a chin on him, though. Like Hrgovic has got a chin.
Yeah.
He's been in there with Dubois. Remember, Dubois stopped him with headbutts, right?
Yeah, I know.
Right, really. I mean, those cuts were caused by a headbutt, right?
Yeah.
So he ate a lot of shots from Dubois.
Mm-hmm.
But Dubois ate a lot of right hands from Hrgovic. I don't think Hrgovic would have any trouble landing a right hand on Fabio.
No. Ironically, I think the fight that would suit Fabio best, really, at this juncture at the moment, is the fight that I wouldn't want to see because I don't agree the guy should be in the ring. I think Jarrell Miller was the right fight at the right time, really.
Yeah.
When Miller you look at last night, when you look at last night, someone who is just going to stand there and just let you tee off on them.
Yeah, I mean, Miller's like a mobile heavy bag that obviously he's got offensive firepower himself, but I think it would have been a quite a spectacular fight if Miller had fought Fabio. And I don't think Fabio would have taken anywhere near the punishment he took off Justice Huni.
No, because I don't think the boxing IQ's there with Jerome Miller. So yeah, it goes back to what I was saying before, Bob, and I don't, disagree if you want, but again, they can't go backwards, can they? He's won a WBA interim for whatever that means, which I don't necessarily agree with it.
I don't
the
actually
belts
know
aren't
what it
really.
means, but anyhow.
Well, no, the belts aren't tied up, are they? There's an undisputed title shot. No one's being denied anything. We've just got Usyk's next fight, so I don't really understand what it's all about. Fact is, you are attaching. Even though I don't agree with them at all, I think they should just be binned, as I've said many times on many different mediums. You're attaching a world strap to it for whatever that means. So he can't go backwards. He can only go forward. And I think you just hit the nail on the head there. The perfect match. Filip Hrgović next.
Yeah. I think Hrgović would prevail.
Yeah.
But I think that's where that level is, right?
He was a good amateur as well, wasn't he?
Olympic bronze, I think.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. I know he was in the Croatian team. I know that.
Yeah, I think he was an Olympic bronze. I mean, there's no doubt that he would have the better boxing skills by far. I mean, my only real criticism of Hrgović is he never seems enthused to fight. He's always sort of. But anyways,
There's always issues, isn't there?
Sort of digress. But I hope Fabio does well. What do you think? What do you think about Justice Huni? Where does he go? And I think he gained a lot of fans last night, but
yeah, he gained a lot of fans over here. Well, he gained a fan in me and Jerry was talking about it this morning. He gained a fan in me and Jerry, and obviously yourself and everyone like that. So I was just saying, at the end of the day, he needs to be. The Saudis need to give him a bit of a reward there because he came in 4 weeks' notice, and that's what he did on 4 weeks' notice.
Yeah.
So, what's he going to do? What's he going to do with a full camp? He did say that there was a couple of problems behind him. He had a couple of niggling injuries. But yeah, I'd like to see him on a Saudi card. Possibly it's not going to be the next one, is it? Which is July, but maybe August. Get him out in August on the.
Maybe get him on that August 16th card with
get him on a Talma and
Dillian White. Yeah,
which I think could be a bloodbath.
Who would you put him in with? Who would you put Huni in with?
Well, I've said I'd like to see him in with Hrgović, but it's whether you can get him. I don't know, because the Saudis are all about, live fights. So I don't know. Kabayel. Let's just throw a name out there. Kabayel. Let's watch the. It's not the student and the master, but I do think they've got very, very similar styles.
Yeah, so I think that would be that's a bridge too far. I mean,
intriguing though, wouldn't it, Bob?
It would be a treat. You could put Huni in with a Jarrell Miller.
Yeah, you could do actually.
I like
that little smile on your face there, Bob.
Just sort of, because I think Huni would handle Jarrell Miller.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
I do.
We should possibly go over to part 2 and continue to chat. You mentioned the bloodbath. Let's talk about that in part 2, shall we?
We will, mate. We will. I'm sure you have plenty to say. I'll see you in a minute.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please like, share, and subscribe, and join us on part 2 with Jamie. And we're going to talk about Moses Itoma and his upcoming match with Dillian White. So join us on part 2. Thanks for watching.